It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. And it is a football Friday before the Commanders take on the Philadelphia Eagles for the second and final time in the 2024 season. And it is a game where the Eagles could clinch the NFC East. Commanders could actually clinch a playoff spot depending on a couple of other outcomes, but could certainly put themselves in a massive driver's seat and guarantee themselves the ability to clinch in Week 17 against the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. So it is an enormous game. We're going to cover it from every angle. It is not the only enormous game of the weekend. We'll get to the college games with Denton Day coming up in about 30 minutes. You'll hear from Logan during the show as well. Logan is in Logan Paulson. And we will talk about the latest injury news coming up in about 15 minutes. And there is actually good news. Actually, I'm not even going to make you wait. Zach Ertz and Jeremy Chin are listed as questionable in this game. And that just came down a few minutes ago. We'll get into kind of the implications of that. But Zach Ertz was a limited participant yesterday in practice and today with a concussion and a shoulder. Obviously, the concussion's the big one. Can he clear the protocol? You can practice on a limited basis without clearing the protocol. It's actually part of the protocol. So there's a chance that Zach Ertz plays on Sunday, which is not something we were counting on this week. We are, at this point, I think, pretty certain that Jeremy Chin is going to play because he was a full participant today, which I think in order to be a full participant, then you need to be able to actually clear the concussion protocol. So Jeremy Chin looks like he is good to go. The other thing that unfortunately is kind of going out or going around the team right now is there's a sickness and illness, and you have to imagine that, I don't know who started it. Dan Quinn talked today in his press conference about they don't know who patient zero is. There's a lot of laughing and finger pointing, but the serious side of it is dudes have been sick all week. John Bates missed practice on Thursday. Sam Cosmi missed practice Wednesday and Thursday. Both of them were full participants today. So the sickness, illness, hopefully that is done. And, frankly, when you look at how the Commanders' offensive line room looked last week, if you told me that on top of Tyler Biotish being sick and missing the game entirely, that if a couple other of them had something and didn't feel 100%, I would feel better about their performance. So there's certainly a chance that just based off health alone, Washington is in a much better situation this week up front, and we will see where things go on that front. Because, as mentioned, the stakes could not be higher. We always start the Friday show by asking what's at stake. And in a season where an adjustment to the expectations was made long ago, where, yes, we still have this big picture view where things in the long term are looking great, looking up. This is year one of the rebuild. Imagine what happens when they have all this great stuff happening, more experience for their young players, even more good players when guys want to come here in free agency. They get some more draft classes, and XYZ down the list. This season, they have been good enough to make the playoffs. They have been one of the top half teams in the league. 14, of course, make it. 7 from each conference now. So you have to be a little bit better than one of the best half teams in your conference. And the Commanders certainly have been. Outside of Philadelphia, Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay, I don't know how many teams really have been better than them. Obviously, Atlanta or Tampa will win the division. I think when healthy, Tampa's not only because they beat Washington head-to-head in week 1, I think they've generally played better. But this Washington team is legit. And the one thing missing from their resume is a really impressive win over a top team. And they've beaten, with the exception of the Dallas game, they have beaten every team they're supposed to. Some have been blowouts. Some have been, obviously a lot closer than they should have been. See last week against New Orleans. But this is a chance to, I'm going to use a phrase that Anthony texted me earlier, and I cringed because he sent me a list of is this this game, that game? And it was like all the sports radio hot button ways you could describe a game. Is it a must-win game? Is it a statement game? Is it a code red game? But it actually is a chance for a statement game. In a way, every game is. You make a statement, and how much weight that carries probably depends on the opponent, the situation. But I think going into the playoffs, assuming they can win one of these final 3, if not 2, they win 2, they're guaranteed. They win 3, they're obviously guaranteed. They win 1, they're probably good enough. If they just take care of business now and they beat a Philadelphia team that has won 9 in a row, has the best defense in football, and an offense that found its passing game last week, then I think you make the case that, I know we've been struggling a little bit here and there, but we can compete with the big boys. Because down in, down out, and I know we talk about this a lot, but down in, down out, this team's pretty good. The question is, can they make the big plays? And this is where the talent deficiency shows. A team like Philadelphia is also good down in, down out. They have A.J. Brown. They have Devontae Smith. They have Jalen Carter. They have Kenyon Mitchell. They have these dudes that just make insanely big plays. key interceptions, key sacks, knock down a ball, get a tackle for loss. Obviously, on the offensive side, touchdown. Oh, by the way, Saquon Barkley is good for at the end of the game, busting off a 60-yard run every other week. And on the off week, he's hitting a 40-yarder. Like, that's who they've been the entire year, which is how you dominate the way you dominate. You don't just play well. All right, we got 4 yards on that play that was kind of designed to get 4 yards. We got 5 yards on this run. We avoid penalties, and we have to drive the ball up and down the field, and we're running a ton of plays, living between the 20s, and then, some weeks we're really good in the red zone, other weeks, no, you hit the big explosive plays. When quarterbacks throw you the ball defensively, you catch the thing. And that is where the Commanders have fallen short of being a great team this year. But they are so close. Like, the opportunities are there. They are generating them. And that is in itself something worth not celebrating, but worth pointing out on how close it is, right? Because we saw last year, like, they weren't generating anything. There were no schematic things that were like, oh, a bunch of dropped interceptions. Joe Witt's clearly got some guys in position to make plays. Frankie Louvu needs to catch the football. Mike Sainers still had one last week. He could have had two. Chin, catch the ball. Like, if they just catch it, scheme worked. You baited the quarterback into it. You generated the turnovers. And if they could just catch balls at a 20% higher rate, they'd be a top 10 team in turnovers in the NFL probably, which is where Quinn and Witt are used to being with the defenses that they've coordinated and coached on over the course of their careers. Offensively, just look at the Terry plays last week. They have one big play threat right now. Like, obviously, if B-Rob busts one like he did in the Tennessee game, cool. He's not like a typical 50-yard run type of back in terms of he's not a 4.3 speed type of guy. He's fast. Like, he's fine, but he's not explosive by NFL running back standards at an extreme degree. Diami's obviously fast, but, like, Terry's the guy. He was wide open 3 times last week in the fourth quarter alone, and Jaden missed him. You start hitting those like you did earlier in the season, and now all of a sudden you're talking about a top-flight football team. One more interception, 2 more big plays offensively, completely different outcomes. And so the process is good, and this is a chance to prove that in your current form, you have grown enough to actually play with the big boys. Playing with the big boys means you've got to make big boy plays or big-time plays. And Jaden Daniels, by the way, is the guy who's been their big-time player this year. He's generated a ton of stuff, but his rate of doing so has fallen off, and specifically it is lower against 2 high shells, a.k.a. when there's 2 safeties playing deep, which makes sense on some level. Like, everyone would rather face 1 deep safety versus 2, but compared to kind of how efficient he's been, his big play ability drops off in those situations more than other quarterbacks. I think I was listening to Athletic Football Show earlier. Derek Klassen had the stat, or it might have been Mays had the stat, one of them, that he's like 5th in success rate when he's facing 2 high shells, and he's 9th in EPA per play, which just tells you you're not pushing the ball down the field as much. Are you getting the little underneath stuff? Yes. Are you getting the stuff down the field? No. And so can he find those plays that he was able to find against the Saints? He had the deep corner to Terry, and he obviously missed a couple of others that could have been big. You find those, you got a chance. And then all of a sudden, the way people are looking at you in the media and on the observers on the outside, how opponents look at you, but maybe more importantly, how you look at yourself changes, because finally we did it. We can compete with a team like this. So it is a chance to make a statement. I'll use the silly term, Anthony, a statement game. But it's a chance this weekend to prove that you're not just a playoff team because you're kind of a little bit better than the teams that are terrible, but that you are actually dangerous going into January. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, a deeper dive into the injury report and what it means if Zach Ertz especially is available on Sunday. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. And coming up in 10 or so minutes, 11, 10 minutes, somewhere, 4:30, whatever time we come back from break, the next one, Denton Day, will be with us. Denton and I actually chatted a little earlier today before he left the office about the college football playoffs. So we have full previews of all 4 games that are going to be in the first round of the CFP this weekend. So very much looking forward to letting you hear that conversation. Denton was great, super thorough. He obviously on top of working for us here at the Team 980 as the fine producer of the Kevin Sheehan Show, as well as host of Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live and the pregame show that he does with Linnell. He also works for SiriusXM covering college football and is all over all of it. So Denton, 10 minutes, must listen, college football preview. Get ready for the weekend. Be the smartest person at your party watching the football over the weekend. Right now, we get back to the Commanders and the Commanders and the Eagles, and the injuries are better than we thought. Not often you get an injury report on a Friday, and you're like, yeah, especially this season for Washington, because it has been like just a nightmare of, oh, that guy's fine, that guy's going to play. Oh, no, he's out. Oh, that guy's fine, that guy's going to play. Oh, no, he's out. And instead, lo and behold, we get the injury report this weekend, and Dan Quinn steps to the podium before we even get to the injury report. Dan Quinn steps to the podium earlier today, and he's like, yeah, the only player that we're going to rule out is John Allen, who a week ago we learned, like at 3:45 when John Keim filed his story for ESPN.com, that Allen might even play at all this season. Like, he was out for the season. So the fact that he's out for this game, like, yeah, it'd be nice to have John Allen back. He apparently had a really good week of practice, and obviously he's probably got some pretty fresh legs, and we'll see how quickly he can become an effective player, and hopefully he can provide some depth along that defensive front. But we thought Zach Ertz was out this game. We thought Jeremy Chin might miss. I think Chin, there was more optimism, but there was certainly not a lot of optimism for Zach Ertz. And all of a sudden, if he is going to play, that is a huge game changer for this Commanders offense. Because simply put, against the Eagles defense, you have to find ways to attack the middle of the field, and you have to be really efficient in the short, quick passing game. And Zach Ertz has a just institutional knowledge of how to get open in the NFL. And these quick underneath routes and being quarterback friendly and understanding where the hole in the zone is, like, it's different than facing a normal zone, because it's all this zone match stuff. And Fangio is really obviously the grandfather of this, and they play it better than anyone. But also, like, the specific zones that they're playing, right? So it kind of plays like zone, it kind of plays like man. It's not quite the same holes as usual, but where the holes in the space are underneath, because they play a lot of quarters. So if you think of your Madden dots, it's like the 4 deep guys and then 3 underneath. So the underneath space is there. They will rally and tackle. They're willing to give that up. But if you have a guy who really knows how to manipulate that space, like, you can get 7-8 yard chunks. And the other thing is, because they match stuff, they're much more likely to be aware of a guy like Zach Ertz and maybe drop someone else in coverage than if it was Ben Sinnott, John Bates, that aren't as threatening, where it's like, if they want to throw to all of those guys, like, whatever. And so Zach's quarterback friendliness, not to mention just Jaden's general comfort, I think it's pretty clear watching the tape and watching how they play. Like, Jaden doesn't have the trust in Ben Sinnott and John Bates that he does in Zach Ertz. And for good reason. Zach Ertz is Zach Ertz. He's a borderline Hall of Famer. And so to add him back, someone that you have to game plan for, someone who's not dynamic, not going to stretch the field, not vertically, but someone you have to account for at all times, because the quarterback is accounting for him at all times. It changes the shape of the defense for Philadelphia. Now, the Chin news is also significant, because it's kind of been interesting to watch how the Commanders have played the run the past couple of weeks. They are really playing a lot of base defense, stylistically, structurally, while not actually having base personnel on the field. Now, if the Saints used 21 personnel at times, 21, meaning 2 running backs, 1 tight end, or even 22, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, and they would get in heavy stuff. And then, Michael Walker and Jordan McGee would come in the game. I actually kind of wonder if McGee leapfrogged. We'd love to talk about the rookie. So McGee last week was playing more in the second half where Walker had played in the first and given up a couple of things. So either way, 3 linebackers on the field, they'll do that against super heavy personnel. If the other team goes 3 tight ends or 2 running backs, then fine, we'll play 3 linebackers. But they would much rather just play a kind of base structured front where we have 4 down linemen, or the Commanders have 4 down linemen, or even 3 plus kind of a 3-4 look. So you play an odd front where you have 5 guys on the line of scrimmage, 3 down, 2 edges, kind of like your traditional 3-4 front. And then at the weak side linebacker spot, Jeremy Chinn just sits there, and he's the guy. And so he's basically playing will linebacker, which provides you support against the run, and he's big enough, strong enough, fast enough, sure enough tackler that works for the Commanders. It allows them to play with heavy structure and light personnel. It gives you speed. It gives you, range. Because also, as an offensive coordinator, okay, they're in their nickel, or they're in their big nickel personnel, or they're, they're in dime even. Yet the front looks like a regular front, and so that flexibility has been big for Joe Witt. And having Jeremy Chinn available to do that against Saquon Barkley and squeeze down some of the space. Because the alternative is, like, the run fit, let's say, doesn't change. And I know this is a little football nerdy. I will try to keep this as high level as I can. But let's say you're responsible for a certain gap as a safety. Well, let's call it the C gap for whatever run play this is and the fit the way it is. So let's say you're responsible for the C gap as a safety. If you have to get down there from 15 yards off the line of scrimmage playing safety, that takes time. There's more space. The offensive line has more time to hold the front and double team before they come off to the second level to you. And that's a hard job to try to fit the run against. Now, playing weak side linebacker, Jeremy Chinn might have that same exact fit, but now it's all happening faster. And yeah, he's got to be able to execute faster, but so does the offense. And that's where I think you gain this huge advantage of, we think we have them in this thing, but they rotated down late, or Chinn lined up in a place we didn't expect, and that should help the Commanders defend the run on Sunday. So he does that better than anybody else on their team. A guy like Defoe can do it. They've used Percy Butler like that a little bit at times, where he'll play a little bit down in the box, but he's obviously not nearly as big of a body type as Defoe, and Defoe's not as big and linebackery as Chinn. So having Ertz and Chinn available is massive in this matchup. Not to mention, Chinn has played pretty decent in coverage on tight ends at times this year. He's got a couple of misses there that folks certainly remember, but having him for like a Grant Calcaterra, and especially the last thing I'll just say is the Eagles love to run the personnel grouping out there with Johnny Wilson, rookie wide receiver / tight end out of Florida State. He's a big wide receiver who kind of plays like a tight end, but kind of plays like a receiver. So having a guy to match that who's kind of a linebacker, kind of a safety in Chinn is actually really nice, as it negates the speed advantage that you have for the Eagles with a guy like Wilson on a true linebacker when they try to fake heavy personnel and then, pass out of it, and there's not enough speed on the field to cover it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, college football playoff, the first ever round of 12 kicks off tonight, Notre Dame and Indiana. And Denton Day is going to join us to talk about that, plus the 3 matchups that span the day tomorrow. Denton, next on the Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And joining us now, one of our colleagues here at the Team 980, you know from the Kevin Sheehan Show, it's Denton Day, producer of that show. But also, did you know Denton has a night job? Specifically, he hosts the post-game shows tonight, tomorrow for SiriusXM on the college football coverage, and he's been doing that all season long. So Denton is going to join us now to talk college football playoff. Denton, what's up, dude?
Greg, what's up, man? This is potentially one of my favorite weekends of the year. I say potentially. We've never done it before to where we are just fire hosed.
How would you know?
We were just fire hosed with football with 3 college matchups on Saturday, also 2 NFL matchups. But I love the playoff, and we're finally here, so we get to see, was it worth expanding to 12 or was it not? I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. A lot of great football. And as you said, the Saturday NFL starts this weekend. Obviously, we were looking, hey, are the Commanders going to play next Saturday? No, they're going to play next Sunday night. Didn't have that one on the bingo card. Thanks, NFL schedulers. But that's not what we're talking about right now. All right, let's start off with the game tonight. You'll be on SiriusXM after this game as well as after the late game tomorrow night. I think I read earlier today, it is the second time ever that Indiana and Notre Dame are meeting on a football field, which is hilarious because they're like 100 miles apart, if that, in the state of Indiana. The game's on campus in South Bend, one of the best seasons in Indiana football history. And what we're going to do, Denton, you know this, but for the audience, we're going to ask Denton a key to the game and then a player to watch. So what's the key in terms of deciding who wins, loses? What's the most important thing in this Indiana-Notre Dame matchup?
Well, the key is for Indiana to avoid mistakes. You know, if you watch that game against Ohio State, where it was their first real litmus test, going up against a team that really is great and has great talent, that first drive for them was awesome, and then they started to make mistakes, giving Ohio State short fields, turning the ball over, special teams mishaps, and when those start to pile up against teams that are legitimately talented, Indiana's lack of talent starts to show. And like, this is Curt Cignetti's first year here. Indiana is way ahead of whatever schedule they were supposed to be on. I would argue that maybe schedules aren't as big of a thing in college football now, just the way that this sport is formatted with transfer portal, NIL, and things of that nature. But they're ahead of schedule of where they're supposed to be. But they have to use that matchup against Ohio State as a kind of a calling card. We were with them when we weren't making mistakes. If we start to make mistakes, we're going to be in trouble, because the one thing about this Notre Dame team is fundamentally they're sound. They learned from that one mistake they made way, way long ago against Northern Illinois early in the season. As long as they are running the football the way that they do, and you know, they're not maybe as good as Michigan was last year at running the football, because Michigan was one of the all-time great run teams. It was just the way that team was built. But they have realized that Riley Leonard he's a good quarterback that can make throws, but as long as you're not relying on him, and if you're having success running the ball, it minimizes the risk for mistakes on their end. So Indiana has to play mistake-free football if they want to hang with Notre Dame in Notre Dame this afternoon.
So who is the key player in this? And I'll let you go either direction here for any of these games. You don't have to pick the same direction each time. Either someone who's like a big-time pro prospect that those of us that pay much more attention to the NFL and are going to start locking in on these college guys for draft purposes soon that we should know about in the game, or someone you're like, this is the guy that's going to decide the game. Screw the pros. Right now, this is the most important person to highlight.
It's Indiana quarterback Curtis Rourke. Because what I just said is going to be true. Like, Notre Dame is going to run the football, and they have a bunch of different options they can do that. If Indiana plays mistake-free football, they're going to be in the game, but you're going to have to rely on Curtis Rourke to make a couple, 1, 2, maybe even more than that, of big-time throws, like legitimate big-time throws, difficult atmosphere, difficult environment, step up into the pocket and deliver a strike. They have talent on the outside. They got a lot of guys that Cignetti coached at James Madison, a lot of guys that he was maybe recruiting who didn't decide to go to James Madison. They went to another school, and then an availability opens up at Indiana that they go to. But Curtis Rourke is going to be the guy. He got some Heisman votes. He's had a really good season, a lot better than I think literally anybody outside of Bloomington thought he was going to have. But this is the opportunity. You had that Ohio State game. Now you get Notre Dame. If he can step up and make some big-time throws, he might win Indiana a football game.
Okay, Denton Day with us here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, produces the Kevin Sheehan Show, and you hear him here on the station. Our YouTube page also features a nice, healthy dose of Denton there in his office, and you can catch him on Sirius. Well, yeah, today you're in my office, which is weird. I'm operating from my home studio. You're operating from my office, and you know, Anthony might have just gone for a walk. Who knows what he's doing? You're going to be on SiriusXM tonight after that Indiana Notre Dame game. Tomorrow, then, you wake up nice. Well, maybe not too early. You got until noon until SMU and Penn State kickoff. Penn State, the favorite here. They're the home team, 8.5-point line here, Denton. What's the key to this game?
The key to this game is the weather, which is kind of a cop-out, it feels like, but you got a team that plays its games in Dallas that's going to be going to Happy Valley. It's going to be cold as all hell. The temperature is going to say 28, but with the wind, it's going to be close to 0 at times, wind chill-wise. And you got SMU that's had this prolific offense, Craig. They're fast as all hell. Not quite the Pony Express, but they have a lot of speed on this offense. Is that going to be able to translate in cold weather? They got a quarterback in Kevin Jennings that's from the Dallas area. I had to go back and look up, like, all right, where did he go to high school? Is he used to playing in this kind of weather? And as far as I know Dallas does get cold at times, but as far as I know, the answer to that is going to be no. So how do you translate?
Can confirm that during football season, like high school football season in Dallas, Texas, doesn't get that cold as someone who used to live there and cover some high school football. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he might get cold in
not
February,
28 wind whipping Penn State cold.
No, not at all. So how do they translate to that? Can they withstand that? Because I'll tell you this, Greg, this is my upset of the weekend. I think SMU beats Penn State. So, but in order to do that, they have to be able to kind of play fundamental football and not make mistakes, but they have to be able to embrace the cold. I don't know what they did this week in practice to get ready for that. I hope they practiced outside in some capacity. My guess is that they've been in Happy Valley for at least a couple of days, so they gotten to get out there and get outside. God help them if they've been practicing all week in Texas, and they're going to decide to come up on game day and say, let's just give this thing a go and hope that we make it out. But I think this has the real potential to be an upset because, well, really, it comes down to the coaching. And Rhett Lashley's done a wonderful job, and James Franklin is tough at times in big games, right? Like, it's different when you're going up against Ohio State and Michigan, certainly, which is something he's had to do now for 10 years at Penn State. But I do kind of worry about what he's going to look like. And the last time we saw this Penn State defense, they got shredded by Oregon. They got nearly 50 hung on the noggin against an Oregon team. And Oregon obviously is the best team in college football, but that's not what you expect from a Tom Allen coach defense. So I think there's a real potential that SMU does the unthinkable. First college game in a long time on TNT, and I think they pull the upset.
Yeah, this playing in the cold is not just a mindset. It's like the football just becomes a rock. And if you're a team that relies on slinging it around and you're not used to catching the rock, like, that's normally a proverbial term. This is literal. Like, you're not used to catching the rock. Yikes. What about a player to watch here on either side? Again, it can be a pro prospect angle or this game. It's a really important angle.
Can I give you a coach that's not James Franklin? Because I think the answer is Tom Allen.
I guess.
Did you learn?
Okay.
I mean, did you learn what the mistakes were against Oregon? Because there's now been a couple of different options, or a couple of different examples against Oregon, against Minnesota, who's not known as being this crazy offensive team. They hung nearly 30 on you. And against USC, and I mean, you want to talk about a program that's in a little bit of turmoil, USC is that. You've now had multiple examples of allowing teams to score a lot on you. And the addition of Tom Allen was supposed to be lock down this defense. If you can't get those things right against this team in SMU, if they start to build a little bit of momentum, I mean, they should have won the ACC championship, Greg. They were the better team in the second half, but the first half was filled with mistakes, short fields, and then you could argue some bad officiating that really hampered SMU. In the second half, they nearly came back and won the thing because they were the better team. Penn State has to fix up those issues on the defensive side of the football, or they might get another 40-burger hung on their head.
All right, now give my audience, the pro football audience, the catnip that they want. Who's like 30 seconds, pro prospect, since you gave me a coach on the player answer.
Yeah, I think Kevin Jennings is your guy. He's only 20 years old, and we talk about in this season of college football, there haven't been a lot of really great quarterbacks, but knowing that he's likely going to come back to school for another year, this is your first example, if you don't watch ACC football, to see a guy that can run the football and throw it around with his arm a little bit, to get to see him go up against a really good defense at primetime.
All right, the team that did wind up winning the ACC championship is Clemson, who sneaks in as the 12 seed. They go on the road to Texas, where they are 12-point dogs in this game. 4 o'clock on TNT is the kickoff time. I'm not a huge college football guy, but I'm guessing that the Texas quarterback situation is probably at least in part a key to this game.
Yeah, just a little bit. Does Quinn Ewers, who is supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in college football this year, does he, one, play the entirety of the game, and does he play well in the entirety of the game? The backup is this dude from a small school in Louisiana. He has a last name that you might have heard of. It's Manning. And if you play poorly, the chance for Arch Manning at home are going to come. And we've seen him a little bit this season He actually played in overtime in the SEC championship game. I thought it would have been hilarious if he ran in a touchdown in that. Ironically, Arch is really good with his legs. You know, when you think of the Mannings, you don't think of athletes, but he is athletic. He comes from the one athletic Manning in the family. So he is an athlete, and he can kind of add a dual threat element to this offense that as of right now, Quinn Ewers cannot. And I don't want to accuse Quinn Ewers of getting the yips at certain times, but there have been some games where you expect him to really play well, and he doesn't. So that's a topic of conversation in this one. Now, ultimately, I don't think it's going to matter, Craig, because I don't think Clemson is very good. I think Cade Klubnik is a fine player, and I think the Clemson fan base, they got really annoying with this. But they were trying to put him into the Heisman conversation after that loss to Georgia because their next, 6 games, he started to play really well. The problem is they didn't play anybody. They play in the ACC, which is not nearly as strong of a conference as the Big Ten or the SEC top to bottom. You get the top teams that are pretty good, but Clemson played 0 of those teams throughout the course of that stretch. So what are their offense going to look like? Really, though, I mean, you talk about players to watch. It's the receivers for Texas. You know, Isaiah Bond is a guy that we've heard because he played at Alabama, and we've seen him if you watch college football over the last couple of years because he was making plays at Alabama. What is he going to look like today? Because it feels like Texas, the main difference on offense for them this year versus last year. Last year, you had Xavier Worthy, who's played really well in Kansas City this year in the NFL, and you had Adonai Mitchell, who's had moments in Indianapolis this year in the NFL. I don't know that they have an NFL wide receiver that's going to step in week 1 and be able to make plays. So can somebody step up when needed for their quarterback, and can they expand this offense? That number is huge. I don't know that I trust Texas to blow anybody out right now just based off the way they've been playing offensively.
Is there another player that you wanted to highlight?
I think really what it comes, I mean, Klubnik is the other one. I'm trying to not to do quarterbacks here for you, but it really is going to come down to a lot of the quarterbacks. This Clemson defense is not exactly as strong as we have been accustomed to Dabo Swinney defenses looking. So what is Klubnik going to do? If you watch that ACC championship game and a lot of the games down the stretch where they were playing better teams in the ACC, it was a one-man show. I mean, even the game against South Carolina that they lost, he was responsible for all of their offense. If Cade Klubnik wasn't running a 50-yard touchdown or making some ridiculous throw, they weren't moving the football. It is a one-man show offensively for Clemson.
All right, last game of the night, Tennessee, Ohio State. Denton Day is with us talking about it, college football playoff tonight and tomorrow. Denton will have the post-game reaction late night on Sirius XM. Of course, you also know him from the Kevin Sheehan Show. But Tennessee on the road in Columbus. Apparently, Vols fans have been going into random bars in Columbus and playing Rocky Top on the jukeboxes, which is amazing. Excellent work out of you. So what is the key, though, once they get in the stadium, get on the field, and the team start going?
Prayer is the key for Tennessee. This is the one, Craig. I'm on Ohio State for the maximum limit. I don't think there's a chance Tennessee wins this one. Everyone's going to be so transfixed on this offense for Ohio State because they played so poorly against Michigan, and that's fair. But I challenge everybody. Look at the defense. There's been one team that scored more than 20 points against them this year, and that was Oregon, the best team in college football. Tennessee's offense has, pardon the pun, been a little rocky at the top of this thing. They just haven't met the expectations that we thought they were going to with their quarterback, Nico Y, who was rumored to be the $8 million NIL quarterback. They haven't been that strong. Ohio State's defense has been just shredding opponents. I don't know how Tennessee is going to score. On top of that, you add the cold. And I know in Tennessee, it does get cold around this time of year, so it's not like you're going from Dallas all the way up to Happy Valley, but it's a different type of cold in Columbus, right? It's just a different kind of cold that you're going to experience, and this game is going to be late at night, bright lights, low weather. This is going to be a tough one. They're going to have to play fundamentally sound. I just don't think they can put up the amount of points necessary in that kind of environment to hang with an Ohio State.
Any player specifically you got your eye on in this one?
Yeah, the defensive end, JT2 Amalio. I mean, you want to talk, I know we're kind of maybe afraid of Ohio State defensive ends in this market for past dramas that have experienced because of that program.
Yeah.
But JT has been one of the best defensive ends in college football for a while now. And I think if you can get pressure on a young quarterback in Nico Y, you're going to doom this Tennessee offense. They don't really have another option if he cannot go, right? I think sometimes people think that college football is just loaded with five-star talent. There really is not a lot of five-star quarterbacks. There's not a lot of good backup quarterbacks across the nation. If they can get pressure on Nico Y and just mess with the rhythm of Tennessee's offense and what Josh Heupel, their head coach, offensive mind, wants to do, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And then you trust at the running game with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. That's the best duo in college football. Both of those guys, more likely than not, going to get drafted this upcoming year and play on Sundays. It might be a very, very long night for Tennessee and Columbus.
You got a long weekend, my friend. You got all the Commanders' usual shows plus the college football stuff. See you on Sunday back here on Team 980.
Yeah, we're going to be on location too in National Harbor at Tom's Watch Bar for the Commanders. So your boy's getting his money this weekend.
Nice. Love that for you. Enjoy all the football. It's Denton Day with us. Sirius XM tonight, tomorrow night. You're hearing back on the Team 980 on Sunday live from Tom's Watch Bar. And then, of course, back with Kevin Sheehan on Monday. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Greg, appreciate it. Let's make some money this weekend.
5 o'clock, hearing from Logan Paulson. Unless we haven't heard from potential guests, have we? Okay. All right.
We have not.
Okay. So you heard from Logan Paulson. You're going to hear from Logan no matter what. So it's not like I'm trying to deprive you of Paulson. We just might have had someone else that was on the show. And Logan, we're going to let you hear our discussion from Take Command. So we can move that around. And we don't have to bother Logan with his schedule. So coming up 5 o'clock, we will let you hear some of Take Command here on the Hoffman Show. Before that, though, back to Thursday Night Football last night, or not back to Thursday Night Football last night, where we saw some history, Anthony. Saw the first made kick off of a fair catch in like years. But I think the thing that's actually interesting about that is Jim Harbaugh calls a timeout before to make Denver punt it. He doesn't call a timeout. No fair catch. No fair catch. No fair catch interference. No fair catch interference. No Dicker the kicker free kicker. And that's why you play it out. And like that's such a Jim Harbaugh thing to be that guy who's just like, you know, if you're playing Madden and your buddy can just take a knee, like the game's over. Like they don't fumble snaps on kneel downs in Madden, as far as I know, because then EA Sports would be getting sued for broken TVs. Like, just doesn't happen. People would just dudes would throw their controllers through the TV. So it's just like, hey man, don't call time. The math is the math. Don't call a timeout. I'm taking a knee. Game's over. And Jim Harbaugh would be the friend that you play Madden with who calls timeout and is like, I'm gonna make you kneel it down 3 times. I know there's only 25 seconds left, but I got all 3 my timeouts, and I'm going to use them. But this is not Madden. This is the NFL. And Jim Harbaugh was like, we're going to see what happens. You know, maybe he's got faith in his special teams. Maybe he knew. I mean, he obviously knew about this rule. But that's why you do it. And guys like that show the competitiveness and just willingness to make the other teams do the work, I love. It's good on Jim Harbaugh for that.
He said it was his favorite rule in the rule book.
Of course it was. It's a weird one, and thus it's Jim Harbaugh's favorite. Meanwhile, the end of the game, there was a decision that got a lot of attention, and I think it shows the difficulty of the fourth down decisions, especially late in games, because Sean Payton decides to punt on a 4th and 6 in kind of no man's land. And a lot of people, I think, wanted him to go for it. And because he lost, it's very easy to be like, yep, clearly should have gone for it. And I actually don't know that he made the wrong decision. Because, like, the Rams had a situation like this a couple weeks ago when they played the Bills, right? 4th and 4, late. Josh Allen's on the other side. Allen is just absolutely killing them. And it's 4th and 4, and Sean McVay goes for it, and they get a conversion. But that's a 4th and 4, and you have Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Kyron Williams and a veteran offense. 4th and 6 with Bo Nix, when you have one of the best 3 to 5 defenses in the NFL, and I know Herbert was on fire in the second half last night. That dude showed like why he is truly one of the best in the league, and he did it to storm whatever his face is, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, who most people think is a bust. Like, he went, I think, 21 of 24 in the second half with throwing to his best receiver being a rookie out of Georgia, Ladd McConkey. I don't know why I said out of Georgia, like that's an insult. A rookie. The rookie out of Georgia. And I know that it's a risk at that point because Herbert's just dealing. But I think when you have Bo Nix as your quarterback in his rookie season, your offense isn't exactly flush with talent. You have to just trust your defense there. And I know it didn't work, but I actually don't know that it was the wrong decision. I don't know that his odds of winning would have gone any higher if you play that situation out 100 times and you go for it half of them. Like, I think that the 50 times you play that out punting result in more wins than 50 times going for it with Bo Nix. And I'm a big go for it guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the right decision. The Chargers clearly tried to run out the clock, and they were just unfortunate. You know, Gus Edwards, who we have been saying he's no J.K. Dobbins, Well, guess what? He had some type of resurgence yesterday back to his Baltimore days where he was able to break out one of those long runs and, position the Chargers, go out there and ultimately win the game. But if they get the stop, obviously, they're just trying to run clock. You still have more than enough time to go out there and put together a drive. So I don't think it was a horrible decision. 4th and 6, nah. Lean on your defense. They're the reason you're where you are now. And that was the right decision, man.
Yeah. I mean, the argument to go for it is if you miss it, you still need to get the stop anyway.
Yeah.
But also, if you miss it, you get the stop. Now the field position is way different. It affects play calling. And if you don't get it and they get 2 first downs and kick a field goal, then it's a couple scores, game's over. So, it's just a different situation. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Logan and I started the conversation on Take Command in our preview show discussing the Commanders' defense performance against the Saints, the good and where that translates to the matchup against Philly, and the concern areas and where that translates to the matchup against Philly. We'll let you hear that next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show, hour number 2 of 3 here on the Team 980. As usual, 4 to 7 each and every day. Appreciate you joining us on your ride home. And today we give you a little take command. Of course, the podcast I do with 10-year NFL veteran Logan Paulson. Played here in D.C., played in Chicago, played in San Francisco. He mashed his face mask into people, and he's very, very smart. And today, the portion of the podcast we're going to play for you is out of the beginning of the show, where we're talking about the Commanders' defense and how they're going to try to stop this Philadelphia offense that they contained through 3 quarters the first time around, but then lost out late to with Saquon Barkley doing the Saquon Barkley thing late in week 11. For the full podcast, of course, you can search for Take Command in your favorite podcast feed, but you don't have to go anywhere right now because, well, here we go. It's today's edition of Not My Beat. The Commanders' defense had a pretty interesting day against the Saints. They obviously shut them out in the first half, give up 19 points in the second half. They get the 2-point stop. That is fantastic. Giving up the 19, not nearly as good. And now you are facing a Philadelphia offense that had one of its best performances of the season its last time out against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just a devastating final drive that ate up basically the entire fourth quarter. And Pittsburgh's one of the better defenses in the league. This is the second time these two teams have matched up. What do you think the key matchups are here the second time around, and how different is it than the first?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many really critical ones. And I think, even in what you said there, just kind of reviewing what they did versus Pittsburgh, how we played versus New Orleans, there's just a lot to touch on. So let's hit the first thing, maybe most important thing, is I think that, obviously the Pittsburgh game is really interesting. That's a good defense, and obviously Philly was dominant in that game. Pittsburgh they have the highest percentage of single high coverages in the NFL. They have a very high percentage of man-to-man coverage, and traditionally throwing the football against teams that do that are kind of in the same coverage structure tends to be a little bit easier, especially when you have people in man-to-man situations that you trust, right? So like people say, oh, well, the Commanders had a harder time throwing the football, but again, we don't have A.J. Brown, we don't have Devontae Smith, we don't have guys that can consistently win one-on-one matchups. And they do, right? They have Saquon Barkley. They have tight ends that can win one-on-ones. And so I think that some of that production in that game from a passing standpoint specifically is reflective more of what Pittsburgh was doing and their answers. And I don't think Pittsburgh's defense played badly. I don't think Pittsburgh's defense played badly. I think what you're seeing from Philadelphia over the last couple of weeks is really the truest definition of a defensive football team. And what I mean by that is their defense is playing so well that they can kind of sit in this game flow where it's like we can run the football, we can be patient running the football. We don't have to get outside of our comfort zone ever offensively, right? Even if we're down by 3 or 4 points in the first quarter, first half, we don't have to panic, we don't have to rush because the defense is not going to let any more points score, and we can run the football, we'll find explosive play. We'll get back into this thing. And I think that's the thing that's so interesting about watching them is they have not really been stressed because the defense is playing so well. So that's one thing. And then now let's go back to the New Orleans part of it. And so one of the things about New Orleans is that I really enjoyed watching, and I did a breakdown of this with Coach Quinn on the Game Plan show, which comes out before the game on Sundays, and just talking about the coverage structures. They ran a little bit of cover 3, they ran a little bit of cover 2, they ran a little bit of man coverage, and just how good they're getting at it. And then how good the coverage structures are getting coupled with how effective the rush is. And I think that's been something that's been really cool to watch, kind of the frenetic energy of the front. And so I think this defense presents more issues from a coverage, and I don't want to say rush standpoint, but definitely from a coverage standpoint than the Pittsburgh Steelers do. So I do think that that's going to be something that is going to bode well for the Commanders. And I think when you look at the 2 perimeter pieces, the Commanders have Mike Sanders still and obviously Marshawn Lattimore. I think there's a really cool opportunity for Joe Witt Jr. to even further diversify that coverage portfolio. Because again, when you look at Marshawn and watching him and how he played, like he just brings a level of athletic dexterity, confidence, understanding of how to play the position that gives you some more flexibility in the back. And I'm not saying they're going to play man all the time or cover 3 all the time or cover 2 all the time, but because of his unique skill set and how talented, strong, athletic, and smart he is, it lets you kind of diversify what you're doing. And I think some of that stuff's going to be really, really important versus the Eagles because, again, they're a defensive football team and they run the ball really well offensively. And so if you can kind of throw a monkey wrench in that run game with some more aggressive coverage structures, there's an avenue here for them to have a very successful day defensively.
Yeah, I think it's so hard, the Eagles, in terms of trying to game plan for them, because if you're game planning for the quarterback, what you would do is just say, we're going to zone it up. We know we're not going to be able to get to you in a major way because your offensive line is amazing. We also don't want you scrambling. So we're just going to zone it up. We're going to make you find holes. We're going to make you be precise. We're going to make you be decisive. And that's how we're going to play you. We're going to be in a bunch of too high stuff. We're going to make sure that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith don't get over the top. And bang, we're done. Like, you're toast. Problem is, if you play a bunch of light boxes, they will not only run the ball down your throat with Saquon Barkley, which, they could run the ball down your throat with any running back because their O-line's so good. And now you're giving them good space, good angles, all that kind of stuff. Now you add in maybe the most explosive player in the entire sport that you're actually handing the ball to. So if he slips one tackle, like, you're talking about a potential 60-yarder. But also talk about numbers in the run game. They'll run quarterback sweep or quarterback power with Jalen Hurts. And now not only do they have the good numbers if they handed it off, but they have an extra blocker in Barkley or Kenneth Gainwell or whoever, because Jalen is now the ball carrier. So they present that really basic football conundrum of, do you try to support or stop the run with numbers? Do you play back? And obviously, if you're playing the run game, like, you probably play a bunch of man-to-man on the outside, load the box. But we've discussed why, like, that isolation basketball strategy is not going to probably play out in your favor because of how good the receivers are. And so that to me is the challenge for Witt is, do you keep Jalen Hurts guessing to where he can't just pick his matchup and just wait and then fire when he's ready, while also making sure that you have the support against the run to make sure that Saquon doesn't ruin your day, which they did for 3.5 quarters last time, and then Saquon very, very, very much ruined their day.
No, I think that's 100% right. And again, I don't think it needs to be man coverage. I think when you look at the New Orleans game, I think the way they're running cover 3 right now, you feel really good about it, right? They kind of start in this split safety look, looks like 2, maybe quarters, and then, Jeremy Chin or Quan Martin will rotate down into the box on the snap, and you can get into some different coverage looks. And I really think that might be a solution, a viable solution, because one of the things about cover 3, again, when Dan was in Seattle, that made it so effective was you're always playing an 8-man box basically. And I think you had really good corners on the perimeter that could kind of knew how to funnel to the middle safety. You had a safety with some range, and again, that's one of the best secondaries of all time. So I'm not saying that's what they can do all the time, but I think definitely that's something that I would kind of look into, is like, how much cover 3, how much aggressive quarters can we play, again, to make sure that safety's thinking run support while also kind of maintaining a good coverage base in the back end. Because again, one of the things about Philly, when you watch the offense, I'm going to say the word simple, right? It feels like they know that they're really talented and they play like they're really talented. And so talented teams oftentimes are like, hey, we're going to line up in, this is the picture, right? It's like, hey, we're going to be in 2x2. We're going to be in solo with 2 tight ends and 2 receivers. There's not a lot of motion. It's not a lot of try to trick you. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing. And I think that to me is something that is beneficial, right? Because we're not going to be tests and rules. We're not going to be trying to bust pipes. It's really just our personnel is better than you. And as a defensive coordinator, the personnel issue is a big issue. But I do think it says, hey, like, we know we can play these coverage structures, and this is kind of what you're going to get out of these looks, right? They're going to pass when they spread it out. They're going to run when they bring the tight ends in. They might bring a little play action, but that's something every team does. So it's not like anything novel and different in those aspects. So that's something that really jumps out to me, is like, take advantage of them being not overly complex. Like, just kind of they're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to have a little wrinkle each week where it's like, hey, we're an empty a little bit more, and we're going to run. Like last week, they got an empty, right, with like basically 5 wide receivers, not 5 wide receivers, but a tight end, and then like Johnny Wilson, who's like a pseudo tight end for them, and they just ran like shallow cross, like, which is a version of mesh, and they ran that exact formation, that exact play, probably 5 or 6 times, which is very unusual in the NFL for someone to run a play, come back to the same play with no augmentation in formation. So I think that's one thing that really jumps out to me, is like, stop the run, play coverage and just hope that your rules and the way you're presenting it are complex enough that you put Jalen Hurts in a spot. Because I will say this about Jalen Hurts, like, he is not, right now, doesn't appear to be overly confident throwing the football. Like, there's a couple opportunities where they run like a fake bubble, kind of like that one where you pump it and the two receivers are up the seam, and there's dudes that are like wide open down the field. And I don't know what he's looking at. And again, everyone's talking about how effective he was as a passer, but he's not throwing the football down the field in these situations where you have an explosive play. And so, I don't want to deal with Saquon Barkley. I don't want to deal with the offensive line from a run game standpoint. Let's put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hand as much as possible. So I'm thinking be aggressive on first and second down, try to stay out of third and short, fourth and short situations, and say, hey, man, Jalen Hurts, you have to beat us. And I know that sounds insane, but like it's
no,
right
I mean,
now.
Look, Pittsburgh last week, yeah, okay, he looks confident. Are they back? He gets up there afterwards and like, oh, is that what y'all wanted to see after the whole week with him and A.J. Brown going back and forth? He threw for 108 yards 2 weeks ago. Like, he has not been good for the majority of this season. Now, as a passer, he's probably one of the 5 worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL, like pure passer. The problem with Jalen Hurts, if you're a defense, is he's not a pure pocket passer.
Right.
His ability as a scrambler, his ability as a runner, what they do with the tush push, like that makes him a top half quarterback in the league. He's that dangerous and dynamic at that stuff. But if they were having a pure pocket passing competition, and by the way, he's also pretty good throwing on the move. Like, he'll find stuff. So he's super dangerous. Jalen Hurts is a good NFL quarterback. But if it was a pure pocket passing competition of you have to read it out, either a pure progression read or, hey, pick a side, read, whatever it is, the super high level quarterback stuff, like that's not his jam. He's a good thrower. He's super accurate, but he's, actually figuring out where to throw is not his specialty. And we've talked about this every time that the Commanders have played Philly the last couple of years. He can do what he does at the extremely highly effective level that he can because their offensive line is so good. He and Lamar Jackson are tied for time to throw in the league. They both average 3.14 seconds to throw every single snap. I think Lamar's is probably a little inflated by the fact that sometimes he runs around for 7 seconds.
Right.
And that brings the average up. But like on a down in, down out basis, he's probably quicker than that. Jalen, I feel like, is much more like, no, that's kind of what he does.
Yeah.
The other big difference between Lamar and Jalen is Lamar has been sacked 21 times. Jalen has been sacked 38 times this year.
Yeah.
In 5 less pressures. So his ability to avoid that and just take a negative play has not been super elite this year. In fact, he's one of the bottom 10 quarterbacks in the league in taking sacks. So I think that's a relevant plot point as well. Like, can the Commanders actually get home on some of these, put them in some second and long, third and long, and then you avoid the vaunted third and fourth and short where they're just going to push their way to a first down.
Well, I think you saw that in the first game, right? Like, he takes some sacks that he shouldn't take, like really poor sacks. He's scrambling out of the pocket. His people are right there. He takes a sack. It's like there's that trick play that they run. He takes a sack on the, what I'm saying? Like he took a lot of like negative plays early in that game, which to me is maybe the difference in the game early in the first half. There's one, or not maybe the difference, but one of the factors that kind of led to a very positive first half and a less productive second half for the Washington Commanders. So I don't know. I definitely think that to me is the crux of it, right? When you look across the offense, like I'm just going to read down their personnel. You got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. You got Grant Calcaterra, who's their tight end, who's a pretty explosive player, but young player, developing. You got Jordan Mailata right now, who's playing as the highest graded offensive lineman on PFF. Landon Dickerson, a Pro Bowl guard. Cam Jurgens is playing well. Mekhi Becton, Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley. Like, there's not a lot of chinks in this armor. So when you go down, or when you go down the list, you kind of say, what's the weakness? And to me, it jumps out as being Jalen Hurts. Because when you watch him on a down-to-down basis, and you mentioned it, right? He's devastating in the tush push, the quarterback runs, the ability to find explosive plays, like when he can do that, when he can extend the play, get out of the pocket. But he does take negative plays, and when you watch the film of him, right? When you watch him turn down open throws, when you watch him pull the football down and create pressure for the offensive line, like that's something that you have to maximize. So how do you do that? It's play different coverage structures, and can the rush get home? He's going to give you a shot. He's going to give you a shot for, like, it was really interesting. I was listening to something on Check the Mic, which is the 33rd Team's podcast about football. And they were talking about how the way that PFF is going to grade this game, there's going to be no pressures given up from the Pittsburgh game, even though there were 2 sacks. And it's like, why is that? And it's because Jalen Hurts is vacating and running into pressures that he shouldn't run into, which I think is a really valid point. So even if the rush isn't necessarily getting home and sinking in the way that they were versus New Orleans, he will give you 3 to 5 opportunities to do that. So can you, when that happens, capitalize on them? And in the first game, we were able to, especially in the first half to a certain extent. But now it's like, can you manufacture rushes? And you see one of the things that I think Joe Witt Jr. did so well in the New Orleans game was work on understanding when they play their double A, like, where's the slide going? It's probably going to go to 4. So that means Bobby's going to be on the back, and Bobby's going to win a rush on the back probably 9 out of 10 times. He's blitzing better than I've ever seen him blitz in his entire career. So can we find some stuff maybe where Saquon Barkley's got to protect, or Kenneth Gainwell's got to protect on Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner? That's a matchup for us, or maybe Jeremy Chin. And then it takes some of the onus off the 4-down lineman to win consistently. So I think that's the type of stuff you're looking at. Coverage structures, different blitz patterns. And again, like, some of the stuff they've done this year from their double A stuff is really exciting. Different rush patterns, different rushers, really forcing the offensive line to identify different people. And again, this group's excellent, but sometimes a little change-up's all you need to get kind of a junk pressure. And I think that's what we're looking at here in this game. But I think maybe this is the point you made 5 points ago, is how are you efficient enough on 1st and 2nd down to make sure you have that opportunity to do that? And when you watch the second half of the Pittsburgh game, they just were like, oh, you're gonna try and be cute with us? Like, we're just gonna put this thing in 4-wheel drive and run 20 consecutive plays, do a couple of tush pushes, and you're never gonna touch the football again. And they're scary enough and strong enough and physical enough up front to get that done. And that's the thing that is like, yeah, all this cool 3rd down stuff, make Jalen Hurts win the game, great. Shoot, you gotta put the mouthpiece in, put the neck roll on, and win 1st and 2nd down to get those opportunities.
For sure. And here's a statistical way to describe the Jalen Hurts conundrum real quick. EPA per dropback's a stat we've mentioned on the show before. EPA stands for estimated points added. Things that really help your EPA, touchdowns, first downs, obviously estimated points added. A lot of points added on touchdowns. A lot of points added on first downs because you extend drives. Well, Jalen Hurts has over 1,000 less passing yards and half the touchdowns of Joe Burrow. Burrow this year has almost 4,000 yards. Hurts has 2,800. Burrow's 36 touchdowns, 8 picks. Hurts 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. They have the same EPA per dropback. The exact same, because Hurts so often converts in those really key 3rd down, 3rd and short, whatever situations. He comes up with clutch plays. And then, I guess this is EPA per dropback. That doesn't even count total EPA, because like EPA is a rusher. Think about, he's got, I think, 10 rushing touchdowns or something like that on the year. So he's really dangerous, but you got to take advantage of the opportunities that are given. It's the Hoffman Show. We're dancing on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And let me tell you right now, you want to be watching us on YouTube. Normally, I don't push everybody to YouTube hard. Right now, at least just pull it up real quick for a peek. You got to see Anthony Haney. I got you a little too far zoomed in on the YouTube stream. I know there's, hold on. Because it's a me thing and how I've got it oriented by the people that are actually watching it. There we go. Now we pulled the camera down. Anthony is wearing, not only is he wearing the disguise that he has been wearing for losing Competition Wednesday, the Groucho Marx glasses, and it's a Washington Nationals like cherry blossom fedora, right? That's what it is. Yeah.
Yep.
He is. So he's wearing that, but then he must have like 4 layers on underneath because he's all of a sudden tripled in size, so that he quasi fits into Chris Russell's ugly Christmas sweater, which yes is a hideous burgundy color. All due respect to the color burgundy, of course, but a kind of a hideous burgundy Bordeaux color. Overalls, like as part of the pattern, and then a giant rooster head with the what are the things called that are coming down, like the beard looking thing, whatever those things are.
Yeah, I don't know.
And a Santa hat on. That's on the sweater. You look ridiculous. Do you have the YouTube stream up, by the way?
Do I have it up?
Yeah. I want you real quick to just pull it up.
Oh, yeah, I do see myself.
Look at the graphic. Anthony, I want you to read the bottom line of the graphic.
Oh, my God. Are you serious?
Read it. Read it for the people that are listening on the radio.
This is not the life I deserve, Craig.
It's the life that you earned.
Sadly, I did earn it. You are absolutely right about that.
Yeah, the top line says, around the NFL, Week 16, picks and analysis. And Anthony, the bottom line says?
That I look ridiculous because, again, I lost Competition Wednesday.
Yes, that is exactly what it says. But it is time for picks and analysis around the NFL. Anthony, how did we do last week? And what are our records as we enter the picks portion of this? And, of course, we'll give you the analysis as well.
Last week we did really well. Last week we both went. What week was last week? That was 14? No, that was 15 last week. We got the Vikings and Falcons right?
That is correct. That is correct. 10-3 for the both of us.
No. We went 13-3.
Oh, 13-3. That's really good. We might know a thing or two.
Or 3.
What would have happened if we had picked Thursday Night Football last night?
I'm not gonna lie, and I'm glad I didn't pick, but I definitely was gonna pick the Broncos.
I think I probably would have too, but you know we didn't. We forgot. One doesn't go on our record. Sometimes you got to know when not to pick, if you know what I mean. All right. There is Saturday football this week. There is Saturday football next week as well. And I'm not just talking about the college football playoff. We previewed that earlier with Denton Day. You can rewind in the Odyssey app about an hour to hear that interview. But Saturday football pro style starts in a chilly day at Arrowhead Stadium where Patrick Mahomes is expected to play, which is flip the line from Houston plus 3.5 to Houston minus 3.5 to open the week. Now Kansas City 3.5-point favorites as they host the Texans. And this is a weird game, man, because the Chiefs' offense has just not been that good all year. They did activate Hollywood Brown today, so they get a dynamic weapon back in the fold. And then the Texans, who we thought would be one of the best offenses in the NFL this year, have been horrendous offensively. C.J. Stroud has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league in certain categories that you'd expect him to be great at. Like I think he's the 3rd or 4th worst QB in the league off play action. And this is like a Kyle Shanahan play action outside zone based system. But their offensive line's a mess. CJ is just not hitting the stuff that he hit last year. Their running game has not been very good, in part because their O-line's a mess. And this is a team that's completely reliant on their defense. And thus the total in this game is 42.5, which actually feels high. I have no idea. I'm going to default to betting on Pat Mahomes because he always finds a way. But if you had told me when the schedule came out, this would have been one of my most anticipated games of the year. I don't even know if I'm going to watch this game. Like, it's that ugly. I probably will, but And I'll watch because I'm home. I'm not gonna make a point to be home.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll watch it entirely. I'll watch here and there. I have fantasy football implications, so I'll dibble in, dibble out. But yeah, I think the Texans offense, man, Joe Mixon since week 10, I think the first 10 weeks he was averaging close to 5 yards per carry, and now it's down to 3. So if the run game isn't going and CJ's not, being accurate in the passing game, you don't really have.
If your run game's not good and your pass game's not good, that's not a good sign for your offense.
No,
that's analysis, baby. We told you we give you analysis.
But no, I think I'm gonna take the Chiefs. Defensively, I think they're still, one of the premier teams. And if it's a one-score game, I have faith in Patrick Mahomes to get your job done.
So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have to read this comment in the YouTube chat right now. Wow, the hunchback from the hoodie fits perfectly.
See, the thing is, they think it's a hoodie. It's actually my coat.
You went full coat underneath.
Yeah, I have to put. I will confess, Craig, it is a little toasty in here.
Yeah, you think? You think? How many layers do you have on right now?
So I have on my hoodie. First of all, I have on a tank top. I have on a shirt. I have on a hoodie. I have on a coat, and I have on this sweater. So 5, technically. 5. That's about a lot for sure.
Yeah, for inside, that's about 4 too many.
Yeah.
Definitely at least 3 too many, if not 4. Okay, back to the games. This game is good. Steelers, Ravens. Baltimore 7-point favorites. This game would be better if George Pickens was playing. Steelers offense without Pickens just does not have a whole lot of teeth. They are going to have to find ways to generate plays down the field. That is how they survive. Their running game is, we've talked about it a ton this year, especially the week that Washington played Pittsburgh. They run it a lot. They're actually not that good at it. And so if you don't hit the big plays down the field, you're just an offense that kind of goes nowhere fast. And the good news for Pittsburgh is TJ Watt is expected to play after a scare late last week in their loss against Philly. But I do think that Baltimore will get revenge. By the way, I picked KC in the last one. You picked KC too?
Yeah, I got the Chiefs.
Okay. I'm taking Baltimore here. They're 7-point favorites. So Vegas is trying to say this is going to be a bit of a blowout for that line to be that high in this divisional game. And I just assume there will be some slobber knocker, AFC North nonsense. But I do genuinely think if you try to look at it objectively, Baltimore is set up to win in the current state of each team, thanks to the Pickens injury, which just totally defangs a Pittsburgh offense that's otherwise dangerous.
Yeah, Pickens definitely not playing. It's concerning. It's still a divisional game. And
it's this division. I'm trying not to buy too much in the Hard Knocks hype, but come on, it's Steelers-Ravens. So what do we really think is going to happen?
And they're always close games. They're rarely ever blowouts. So I think it's going to be close, but I think the Ravens are going to be able to pull it off. Their run defense is still as stout as possible, and I don't know. I have faith that Lamar is going to be able to get the job done. He doesn't have a good record against the Steelers.
He does not, but also there have been a ton of drops in those games. It's not like he's played totally terribly. They haven't played well as an offense, but there are times where Lamar has dropped balls in the bucket and guys have dropped it. So we'll see if they can catch. It's funny how such a complex game with all this scheme and this and that and the other thing sometimes just comes down to, hey, dude, drop the ball, throw and catch. Can you make it? Giants and Falcons, Michael Penix's debut. They're 8.5-point favorites because the Giants are terrible. 1, 2, 3, Falcons. You're not taking the upset?
I feel like the Falcons are going to run the ball all over him, so no.
That's probably correct. Bijan, by the way, 237 carries, 1,100 yards already on the year. With 81 yards receiving, Drake London will go over 1,000 for the season. Lions and Bears, it's only a 6.5-point line, Anthony, which is interesting. But these two teams did play that wild close game on Thanksgiving, which was the last game of the Matt Eberflus head coaching era. Lions without David Montgomery for the rest of the year. They've also lost more key players on defense. They are just running out of players on defense. But I just don't think that the Bears have the ability to threaten this Lions team. It's not like they're playing Buffalo. It's not like they're playing the Baltimore or one of these top offenses. It's the Bears. And unfortunately, the Bears are going to have to try again next year. Give me the Lions.
I think you should also factor in the weather, though, Craig. It's going to be cold in Chicago.
It is. You know who's not scared of the cold? I know they play indoors, but like,
aren't afraid of the cold.
I don't think a football team that tough with Dan Campbell's going to be out there. If Dan Campbell could coach that game in his underwear, he would.
He probably would.
Like Dan Campbell was one of those guys. I was trying not to get too descriptive, but Dan Campbell was definitely one of those guys that when it was cold out and he was a player, he would warm up with no shirt on.
Yeah,
and be like, I like it. I like if my nipple's frozen.
That's a little crazy.
He probably can't feel it anyways because he's got 1,000 milligrams of caffeine going through his system at all times. But
yeah, I'm going with the Lions.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with the Lions, and that's enough about Dan Campbell's nipples. Browns and Bengals. I was trying to see how uncomfortable I could make Anthony make, and then I remember I'm staring at a human being who's wearing a Rooster sweater and Groucho Marx glasses, so what chance did I really have? Browns and Bengals. We don't need to talk about this game. 1, 2, 3, Bengals. DTR starting for the Browns. Good luck, kid. Titans and Colts. Especially considering what happened last night, where the Chargers beat the Broncos and open up the AFC playoff picture. The Colts finish with, what is it? The Titans, the Giants, and
the Jags.
The Jags. When the Jags are the hardest game you have in the final three, holy missed opportunity, Indianapolis. Technically, they're still alive. They got to win this one. They are going to face a tougher version of the Titans because Mason Rudolph is playing, not Will Levis. But this feels kind of important, I feel like, for the staff all of a sudden. Like, I do feel like finishing the year strong. I don't know that Steichen's on the chopping block, and I don't think he should be. But it is these games all of a sudden feel really important to not do something embarrassing in Indy.
Yeah, I think they definitely need to go out there. There's still more football to be played. Go out there and win the games. But, yeah, last Sunday definitely hurt them. I felt as though that was the win-or-go-home game for them because these next 3 games are against guys that are going to be fighting for the 2, 3, 4, picks. Like, they won't mind losing. Like, yeah, I don't think they will.
Handle your business. Colts and is the pick. Colts for Anthony as well.
Yeah, I'm going Colts.
Rams and Jets. I don't know if this is a stinky fish or just the Jets have been playing a little bit better. But the Rams are only favored by 3. I don't want to say it's a must-win game for LA, but certainly they're in a dogfight for the NFC West. They are in the driver's seat in the NFC West. They do have to go across the country. And the Jets, again, have been playing better. It's cold weather. Like, is Stafford going to be able to sling it around like he normally does? They are a warm weather indoor team. But I do think as the Rams offensive line gets healthy, like, they're going to be just fine. They're actually not built to play in December. I know they've kind of got this, like, throw it around type attitude, but I think the thing that actually really defines the Rams is the toughness that they play with. Like, Puka Nacua will absolutely break your face. Like, Cooper Kupp is nasty as a blocker. Like, they get receivers that get after it, and they play with an attitude. And I think that I don't think they're going to, like, blow out the Jets necessarily, but I do think that they're ready to take it to them. And they will be the more physical team, and thus give me the Rams on the road.
Yeah, the Jets have been playing better offensively, but I'm going with the Rams. I like their offense better than the Jets.
I mean, Devontae last week getting 9 for 198 in the second half.
Crazy.
One of the craziest things ever.
But Garrett is also cooking too, though.
Yeah, he should be cooking more. The problem is his quarterback's not very good. Eagles and Commanders. We will pick that one at the end of the show. The last game in the 1 o'clock window that we will pick right now, Arizona and Carolina. Arizona 5-point favorites on the road. I do think Carolina has a great chance to cover here. I think that they took a big step back last week. I think they'll be ready to go this week. And I think Arizona, while they are playing better, is just not a team that I trust. Big question, of course, is can Trey McBride get in the end zone? He's only got 89 catches, 938 yards on the season. None of those 89 catches are touchdowns. That's got to be close to a record.
Yeah, got to be. I hope he gets in for fantasy implication. But
So
I'm being
Anthony's
selfish.
rooting for himself in this one. I got Arizona winning a tight one.
Yeah, I got the Cards as well.
Okay, that is the early window and the Saturday games. We will pick the 4 o'clock window, and we got some good primetime games coming up next as well. But first, let's get an update on the... Actually, nope, sorry, not going to do that right now. We'll get the update on the world of women's sports in 30 minutes. Wrong segment, Craig, wrong read. Anthony, let's skip what's trending in the interest of time, and we will continue to give you the updates that you need to know on all of the injury fronts for fantasy purposes coming up next as we finish going around the NFL on the Team 980. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, where you see ridiculously dressed Anthony Haney here on the Team 980. He, of course, lost competition Wednesday, and thus is wearing Chris Russell's gigantic rooster sweater, complete with overalls as part of the pattern. We now get to the 4 o'clock games as we go around the NFL. Sit down. The Vikings and Seahawks. And Anthony, I got to say, thanks to the schedule makers this weekend, because there are actually like a decent number of good games, and they are all spread out. Like, the best 4 games of the weekend are probably Chiefs-Texans, which is 1 o'clock on Saturday, Steelers, Ravens, 4:30 on Sunday. Eagles, Commanders, 1 o'clock on Sunday. And then this game, Vikings, Seahawks at 4:05. Like, nice, even spread. Of course, will I watch, pull up Red Zone at some point? Probably. Although for 3 of those games, I'll either be at it or it's the only game on. But, like, you can just kind of lock in on one really good game if you want to, which is fun. Vikings, Seahawks in the 3 o'clock window, or the 4:05 window. Vikings are 3-point favorites. And I think the line kind of suggests that Geno Smith is going to play. Because if Sam Howell was playing the way he played last week against a Brian Flores defense, this line should be 30. Like, the idea of that pressure package versus that quarterback, yikes, bro. But Geno looks to have made enough progress that he's going to play. I know this game's in Minnesota, but still give me the Vikings. I just think they're the better team. I don't think that the Seahawks secondary is disciplined enough to keep up with the Sam Darnold and company. And I also think that, I do think the Seattle offense is going to struggle against this Minnesota defense. So the task is only so tall for the Minnesota offense. I'm thinking like a 20 or a high 20s to high teens kind of output.
Yeah, even if Geno does play, he's going to be limited. And Flores likes to send blitzes from everywhere. So you're going to have to be able to move in that pocket. And I just think it will be a long day for Geno and company. I'm going with the Vikes. They also get Stephon Gilmore back. We got to watch out for the Vikings, man. They look dangerous.
They're 12-2. The problem is they're 12-2 in a division with the Lions and with the Eagles having won 9 straight, 10 straight, whatever it is. 10 straight going into this game against Washington. So the Vikings, all they've done is win. And that is obviously tremendously impressive. They've got a couple of big games down the stretch, so we'll see what they can do. But they're in the 4:05 window on Sunday in Minnesota. The other games in the late window, Patriots, Bills, 1, 2, 3, Bills. Jags and Raiders. Aiden O'Connell's playing. If that has fantasy implications for you, congrats on somehow making your fantasy playoffs while also needing Aiden O'Connell to be relevant for you. Anything else you want to say about this game?
This is nasty.
Who you got?
I think I'm going to go with the Raiders.
I'm going to go with the Jags because I think the Raiders are favored by 2, and I don't know why. Like, they're terrible. Like, god-awful. The Jags have shown some spunk. Niners and Dolphins. This should have been one of the games of the day. Instead, it's this. The Dolphins are favored by 1. The game's in Miami. It's weird because, like, a lot of people I feel like are talking about what the 49ers, like, the discussion now is like, how does Brock Purdy play? And then what does that mean for his potential contract? I think a lot of people are kind of pointing at the Tua contract as a similar model for Purdy, where it's like, hey, we're not going to pay you like a top guy, but we are going to pay you because we know that in our system you can be really good, and we can surround you with enough people at that pay number because you're kind of like a tier 2 type quarterback as opposed to just like, hey, you're the next tier 1 guy, so we're going to pay you a bunch of money. So to see these two teams face off is kind of fun. I have no idea what to do with this game because I have no idea week to week what 49ers team is going to show up.
Yeah, and you also don't know if Debo is going to show up. He's been dropping the ball.
Yeah,
not helping his quarterback out. Like,
they're down another running back. Garundo is down now. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with San Francisco because I trust Purdy and Kittle as long as they're out there.
Waddle's out for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'm just San Francisco.
I'm going to go with San Fran as well.
Sure. Bucks and Cowboys. Only a 4-point spread. Tampa 4-point favorites on the road. I mean, I guess being a 4-point home or a 4-point road favorite is kind of hard in the league. But Bucks and Cowboys. Any chance for Dallas here?
Nah. Baker's cooking, man.
He is.
He is cooking. That offense looks good.
They played really well against. I know Carolina's like against Carolina, but like Carolina have been a lot spunkier, and Dallas did a good job last week. But yeah, give me Tampa with the way that they're playing right now. And then Saints and Packers. The Packers are favored by 14 on Monday Night Football. 1, 2, 3.
Go Pack,
pack. All right. That is our trip around the NFL. When we get back, we go back to the Commanders and Eagles, and we pick 6 players who we think are going to have the biggest impact on the game Sunday. We call it creatively our Pick Six, and it'll be at what time, Anthony?
6.
So it's our Pick Six at 6 next on the Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 final hour here as well. We're live on the free Odyssey app and on YouTube at the Team 980. You miss any part of the show? Rewind in that Odyssey app. You can also, of course, check it out on the Hoffman Show podcast feed. And if you're on the Odyssey app, whether you're listening to the podcast or you're listening to the live radio show, you can meander on over to the live page and leave us a voicemail. And you might just hear your own voicemail in this show for us to respond to. So we're working out when we want to put in some of the voicemails, but they're starting to roll in. So definitely let us know, your thoughts. Just hit the leave a voicemail button on the Team 980's page when you are listening to our show. All right, our show, the Hoffman Show, does a thing on Fridays during football season where we pick 6 players who we think are going to have the biggest impact of the game on Sunday. And because it's at 6 o'clock, we're picking 6 players. We call it very creatively the Pick 6 at 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, Pick 6 at 6 time. As I just said, we're going to pick 6 players. The only caveat that I did not mention is that quarterbacks are ineligible. You cannot pick a quarterback in this exercise. No Jalen Hurts, no Jaden Daniels. I am up first this week, Anthony, and I am going to go for number 1 with number 4. I'm going to go Frankie Louvu as the most important player for the Commanders this weekend. Jalen Hurts takes on a lot of pressure, like a lot of pressure, in part because the offensive line for the Eagles is so good that he just trusts that pressure is not going to come, and sometimes he waits a little bit too long. He has, tied with Lamar Jackson, the highest time to throw in the entire league. So from snap to throw, it takes on average Jalen Hurts 3.14 seconds to throw. However, the difference in Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson is Jalen Hurts has been sacked 38 times. Lamar has been sacked 21. So, Frankie Louvu, as the best pass rusher on the field, can you not let Jalen Hurts stand back there forever and dice up your defense? Just slow read it. Can you be impactful? 2, as a coverage player, can you perhaps get underneath the ball and catch it instead of having hit you in the face mask? I'm sure Frankie's probably tired of hearing whatever Joe Witt has been razzing him about all week after he dropped yet another interception. And 3, run fits, very important this week. Saquon Barkley, very good at football. And so obviously Frankie's going to have a big role in that. So primary, pass rusher, secondary, actually really the secondary would be run stopper, and then tertiary coverage player, Frankie Louvu. Looking at you, kid. Need you to be a playmaker this week if the Commanders are going to pull this upset.
I love the pick, man. Love the pick. With number 2, though.
Number 2,
I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin. Obviously, he's our best player on the offensive side of the ball outside of Jaden. And in the first matchup against the Eagles, he had 1 catch for 10 yards on 2 total targets. And that's unacceptable. We need Terry to come out here, get more involved in the game plan. And yes, that may fall on Cliff. Cliff did admit earlier in the week that he didn't call a good game against Philly. And the fact we were able to move him around all last week, he wasn't just on the left side of the field being bracketed by Quinyon Mitchell, who sort of kind of did shut him down, though. Like he didn't get targeted at all. So I'm expecting Terry to go out here, just get more involved in the game plan and try to be productive in the passing game, help Jaden out, get open, because that was also another thing. Our guys were not getting open or they were dropping the ball. So Terry, go out there, set the example. Even if it's a jet sweep, we need Terry. We need the ball in Terry's hands.
Yeah, I mean, last week they had a more even split of him left to right than they had all year. They put him in the slot. They've been using him in the slot all year, but maintain that high percentage. Not high percentage, but high enough percentage. They put him in motion quite a bit. And I think it's especially important against a team that plays a lot of zone. Like, you gotta move him around and understand this is what they're trying to do to us. This is where the weakness of the zone is, right? Because like, that's the thing that just drives me bonkers about some NFL offensive coordinators. And it's like, okay, we have this cover 3 beater, and most likely, like we know that the defense is going to be able to shut down certain stuff, and they can't shut down everything. And the thing they're most likely to give us is this hook route, this flat route, this thing. So put your best player at that spot. Don't put your player on your best player on the go route, which they cover 98% of the time, right? Yeah, okay, 2 times out of 100, might they drop it and all of a sudden you get a touchdown out of it? Amazing. And against certain coverages, it's worth it because, there was a play last week against the Eagles from the Steelers, for instance, where they put Van Jefferson on a vertical route and just ran him past the zone coverage, right? It's quarters. You should never get beat deep in quarters because in quarters, you have 4 defenders, 4 of them that are all having deep quarter responsibility. But sometimes, because you have 4, those players kind of rely on the fact that the other guy might get it. And so what happens sometimes in quarters coverage is you run a vertical route straight through the middle of 2 of those guys, and they both kind of do the you got him bit. And even if it takes them a second and they both wind up running with the vertical, that half step for a player like Terry McLaurin is really valuable. Russell Wilson wound up missing Van Jefferson on this play, but you're like, oh, that was a great throw with great anticipation, or a throw with great anticipation. He was inaccurate. But also, if it's a faster receiver, a guy with more juice, perhaps it's worth it. But down in, down out, the areas that you're going to attack are far more underneath. Well, we know Terry is this really electric player with the ball in his hands. So can you get him to just sit down at 6 yards, catch the ball, and then turn upfield and break a tackle, or run into someone hard and bring some energy? Like, these are the kinds of things you have to do as an OC. You have to move guys around to get them in the spot where, hey, the ball's probably going to wind up going here, even if it's the not the big explosive play that we would hope, but it's the most likely outcome. So let's try to create the explosive by making the guy who is most likely to get the ball an explosive player. Or they shift their coverage because now, oh, it's just the flat route, but it's the flat route to Terry McLaurin. We got to come up on that. Well, now we got a hole shot up the sideline, and we get a chunk play to De'Ami Brown or to Luke McCaffrey or to KJ Osborne, who should make his debut this week, or whoever, because the attention was focused on Terry, and now they've given up something that is more than what they would had you just run Terry on the vertical and they prevented everything deep and forced you to check it down. So I think Terry is really, really important to them every single week. I kind of try not to pick him just because, but I really did think about it, taking him number 1 overall, because the way the Eagles play, he becomes even more critical. And it was so apparent in the first matchup that he is kind of the key to unlocking everything on offense. All right. Number three. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Zach Bond is the Eagles' outside or inside linebacker. He was an outside linebacker. He's been converted to inside, and he has been a bit of a revelation this year for Philadelphia. He has been tremendous, and in the first game, he was all over the freaking place. Ton of tackles, making hits, big impact in the run game, big impact in the pass game. And for a guy that was like an outside linebacker type, the ability for him to cover is pretty impressive. But he still is a converted outside linebacker, and he is definitely a guy that plays really aggressive football. And so if you listen to the offensive portion of Take Command at the end of our preview show, you'll hear Logan talk about this in painstaking detail. But the short version is you can kind of get him on some play action stuff if you do it right. If your execution is on point, you can draw him in and create a little bit of space, and you can get some good matchups where he's a little, like, 1, you can create more space in the zone, or 2, at times they'll just drop guys where he'll I don't want to say panic, but like he'll run to a spot kind of blind after he's recovering from biting up on a play action fake, and now you got someone who's wide open underneath. And this is where a guy like Ben Sinnott becomes really interesting, right? It looks like Zach Ertz might actually be able to play after all, which is huge for this game because of the attacking underneath zone stuff that we've talked about throughout the day. But if I could pick a Commander's tight end, for instance, to just get lost in coverage and say, let's complete a 5-yard pass to him and let him turn around and turn into a human bulldozer, Ben Sinnott's my guy. It's the one thing that I feel confident about him as an NFL player right now is like, get the ball in his hands and let him carry it and see if he can run over someone. Because he's got decent speed, he's got good power, and he's got good feel in the open field. So can they get into some of those 12 or 13 even personnel sets, one running back either 2 or 3 tight ends and run some of the concepts that Philly at times struggles with, get him a little lost in space, and let's get some confidence building for Ben Sinnott moving forward. So that Zach Bond and his ability to stay disciplined, play the pass well, play the run well, not get fooled in play action, and not lose any kind of one-on-one matchup now that Ertz is potentially playing, I think that is a huge key to the game and the ability to manipulate those underneath defenders by Jaden Daniels. Because also, the other thing with Bond is he's in a prime position to make plays as a tackler or as a guy in space if Jaden decides to scramble. And so how does he handle that responsibility as well? So that's my Zach Bond case, Anthony.
Nah, Zach Bond, great call. Again, he's top 5 in tackles. Guys that are top 5 in tackles are always around the ball. And when you're around the ball, you're obviously making plays. So we take him out of, the game plan. Even like Zaire, he's always in the top. And I know when they played the Texans early in the season, they played the Packers, guards, centers, everybody's keying that guy right there because they know how pivotal he is for the defense because he's always around the ball. So, yeah, he's definitely going to be important in terms of, making sure he's not wrecking what we're trying to do.
And can you use the aggressiveness against him? You want to be around the ball? Fine. Ball's going that way. Ball's going this way. You got to be able to run those guys and create some confusion and put them in conflict. Go right at them, which sounds counter. They're going to be at the ball anyway, so take the ball to them. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're doing our Pick 6 at 6, where we try to identify who we think will be the most important players in the game on Sunday for the Commanders. In this case, their NFC East showdown with the Eagles. 3 down, 3 to go, and we will get to them next. But first, let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports, presented by Wawa. Chicken, how you want it, at Wawa, with customizable crispy or roasted chicken sandwiches. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we are in the middle of our Pick 6 at 6, where we take 6 players who we think are going to have the biggest impact in the Commanders-Eagles matchup this weekend. First 3, Frankie Louvu, Terry McLaurin, and Eagles linebacker Zach Bond. Anthony, you are up, sir, for number 4.
Number 4.
Number 4, Mr. Craig Hoffman. You've gone defensive side of the ball with your first 2 picks. I'm going to go offensive side of the ball. Again, I'm going to go on the Eagles side, though, and look at that boy Saquon Barkley. I think you and Logan hit the nail on the head when you guys were talking about forcing Jalen Hurts to go out there and beat us. We know he's not all that accurate of a passer when it comes to just pocket passing. And a lot of the success of the Eagles offense has been because of Saquon Barkley. The fact you won a game throwing for 108 yards because of how dynamic Saquon is, I think is a little concerning. So, again, I think if we go out there, we limit what Saquon does against us. And for the most part, we did that. We have to play 4 complete quarters. The first 3 quarters, I want to say he was around 70, 80 yards rushing. And then he was able to rip off 2 crazy runs in the 4th quarter. That can't happen. We know he does keep coming, but we got to play 4 complete quarters, limit him, force Jalen Hurts to go out there and beat us, and having Marshawn Lattimore, having Mikey Samer still on the outside will definitely help that when it comes to, the passing game. So let's see if Jalen Hurts can beat us.
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely, like, if you were ever to break the rule and just be like, I'm picking a quarterback, like, Jalen's ability to, like, be a competent NFL passer or not on any given Sunday is a pretty significant wild card. Saquon obviously is an MVP candidate, probably 2nd, 3rd right now, somewhere behind Josh Allen and Lamar. Like, not exactly a bold take to take him, but he correct. Like, he can wreck your day in a way that most NFL running backs can't. Like, even Brian Robinson, right? He gets loose, good cutback, physical run, 9 yards, tackled. Damn, we gave up 9 yards, but okay, it's 2nd and 1, or maybe it's 1st and 10, but we didn't, unless you're Tennessee, we didn't give up a 40-yard touchdown. Saquon gets that same cutback, and good night. Like, it's 30 or it's 60. It's however many yards between him and the end zone. And that explosive playability is just such a game changer for them, because you have to find explosive plays somewhere. And this has been kind of one of Washington's problems and why the more I think about it, the more I don't hate the idea of drafting a running back fairly early next year if they're truly an explosive big play weapon, because you need to generate explosives somewhere. And if you can't generate them in the running game because your backs or your offensive line just isn't hitting it, then that's a problem. And like earlier in the year, they got that with Eckler, and Austin wasn't, making 70-yard house calls, but he was consistently picking up a 25 or 30-yard play somewhere in the game. And sometimes it was a screen, but kind of that screen game, running game, the extension of the running game that we hear about all the time. Washington just hasn't had that lately, which is kind of where my head is with number 5, and why, by the way, for number 4, Saquon, absolutely correct pick. Number 5,
Number 5.
Oh, I'm torn. Yeah, let's do it. De'Ami Brown. De'Ami should have had a bigger game statistically last. Like, in many ways, he actually took on the Noah Brown role. Did you know Noah Brown's like 5th in the NFL in PIs drawn?
Yeah.
Like, he's drawn 6. Like, I saw a list the other day of people that have drawn PIs, and it's like, it's the guys you'd think. It's like Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown. And sure enough, with 6, there's Noah Brown sitting there. And last week, De'Ami didn't draw a PI, but, if Allegretti doesn't have that penalty late, like, he's got the game-sealing catch. And so he wound up with 3 for 30. 2 of them were jet passes, touch passes. So he is, like, they're designing touches for him. Or maybe one was a jet pass, one was a screen, and then he had another reverse. I can't remember the machinations, but he only wound up catching one downfield pass, but you see he has an impact. And outside of Terry, he's the guy to get explosive plays with. And you can get some with those Z, maybe, like, he's a quick twitch. I think Crowder, like, could you do some screen stuff with him? Terry's the big play guy, and then Diami is just the other guy that can take the top off the defense. So can you find a way to get him loose, whether it's in the screen game, which has been better the last couple of weeks? Can you get a reverse? He's had a couple of big carries this year. Or whether it's a big comeback, he's done a great job of attacking the football, getting down the field, hard cut, come back, catch the ball, secure it. Like, he's been good when called upon. Just consistency, and can he get a deep post? Can he get a go ball? Can he find a play down the field, catch or PI, that moves the Commanders, and changes field position, or maybe even gets in the end zone? So I just think knowing they need to find some explosives, knowing that they've been good down in, down out, and they need to take the top off and open this thing up, Diami seems like the most likely guy to do that. And so Diami Brown, number 5.
I like number 5. I like it.
I like number 5 too.
6.
That's Jaden Daniels. Number 5 is Jade. He's very good. We're not allowed to pick him.
Yes.
See what we did there.
Before I pick number 6, do we know who our kicker will be on Sunday?
No, but did you see the hilarious story that both kickers missed practice this week because their wives were going into labor?
I did see that as well.
What a wild coinky-dink.
I did see that.
But it does look like Zane Gonzalez is probably going to be the kicker because he was a full participant Thursday and Friday in practice.
Okay, that's a bet. Well, my 6th pick is sort of kind of going to be 3 special team players.
Okay.
We have Tress Way. We have Luke McCaffrey on the kick returns. And then Zane Gonzalez, our kicker. And part of the reason I have Tress on here is because, and Luke, I think field position is going to be huge against this Philly defense. Driving the length of the field, every possession, I don't think you necessarily want to see that. So if we can, just get some favorable field position where we don't have to necessarily drive, 70, 80 yards, I think that would be, best for the offense, just because of how difficult it is to, put together 10, 11, 12 play drives against this Philly defense. Luke McCaffrey, I say, because of he's filling in for Austin Eckler, who's been really good on the kick return. And I want to say McCaffrey had a good return last weekend, but
he had a couple decent ones. But I thinking back to earlier in the season, how many Austin had a big one every game, and sometimes it doesn't pay off directly, but sometimes these guys come together, right? You have Eckler return a big one, he gets out to the 40-yard line, you get 2 first downs, but you wind up punting, and then Tress would pin him inside the 10. Other offense doesn't really do anything. They get the ball back. Now you get the ball back again at the 50, and then you got a short field, and then you take advantage of it, and that's when the touchdown comes. So, yeah, that field position game, I think, is enormous.
Yeah, so that's more so what I was getting at. And then Zane, obviously, the kicking has just been stressful, the last couple of weeks just because there's no consistency there.
Stressful is a good word for it.
But we're probably going to need Zane to, hit a 40-yarder or a 50-yarder, just having that luxury itself. I don't know, man. Having a kicker is such a huge luxury. We see it with the Steelers. We see it with Kansas City, how they've been able to, walk off some games. Justin Tucker, obviously, he's been historically good. So if we can just get consistency there, I think they'll bode well for us against the Eagles.
Yeah, making kicks better than missing kicks. But also, bonus here. Not a player, but a bonus in the pick 6. Dan Quinn. Play like you have to score touchdowns. Please. Play like you have to score touchdowns. Please do not kick a bunch of super short field goals.
29-yarders?
Yeah, no. If it starts with a 2 and there's not 3 seconds on the clock where the game winner, don't kick it.
Yeah.
And then don't kick a bunch of long field goals either. Just if it's 4th and manageable and it's a 50-yard field goal or a 4th and 4, just go for it, man. Be super aggressive. Trust your best player. Your best player is Jaden Daniels, or one of your best players, if not your actual best, your future best player for sure, and Jaden Daniels. And let's play like you need touchdowns. So, who's your key player for the game? 301-230-0980. We've been going to 6:45 on Fridays quite a bit recently, so we haven't really had a 6:30 segment. But we do, which means we have space to talk to you. I will take a key player and a prediction from you. 301-230-0980. It's Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we just wrapped up our Pick 6 at 6, which if you missed, you're just getting in the car, just logging in, just tuning in, however it is that you're joining us, or maybe you missed part of it. We'll put it up in the podcast feed because we put everything in the podcast feed. That's why you subscribe to the Hoffman Show podcast. It's right there in the Odyssey app for you, in Spotify, in Apple Pods, wherever it is that you listen. But yeah, definitely we'll have that up for you after the show ends. And we'll also put that up this weekend on YouTube at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman. But mention it not just to be like, hey, if you missed it, go check it out on demand. Look at us, a 21st century radio show. We have multiple platforms. Anthony, that was hard. Like, abnormally hard to pick 6 players this week. And it's funny because I was thinking that the whole time. And then as soon as we went to break, you're like, hey, I have a question for you. Was that way harder than it usually is? And I was like, yes. Yes, it was. Why was it so hard for you? I've got a theory, but I'm curious what you think.
I think it was hard just because the Eagles, as talented they are, like I feel like every team isn't as talented as the Eagles. And, you know, you think you have an advantage here or you have an advantage there. And when you look at the Eagles, like, team as a whole, it's just where their deficiencies at. Like, where can we really exploit this team? And there's not really a lot of places you can exploit them, which is why I was sort of kind of getting at, like, we got to play complementary football. Like, this has got to be a game where we go out there and play perfect football, down in, down out. And that's probably, like, our only way of, you know, beating this. It's not just the Eagles. You got the Lions. You got those teams that are at the top. Like,
sure,
those teams don't have a lot of places that you exploit. And this is just one of those teams. Granted, it is a divisional game, so it'll be competitive, but still, like, where do we get our competitive advantage? You got to, like, really think about it. Like, maybe this, maybe
they're
that.
also so well balanced. And, like, I think some weeks it's like if they get the run game going, then you're set. Like, Brian Robinson could rush for 125 yards and the Commanders could lose. That's possible. I'd say it's unlikely just because in order to get, unless he busts like a 60-yarder and then the other whatever carries, or, you know, does he go 16 for 125 because he has a 16-yarder, but he's actually really like 15 for 65, right? And that's kind of what it was against the Saints, by the way, because he had one 20-yarder that was not even a true run play. It was a lateral. Like, it was a screen pass, a swing pass that just happened to be backwards. And he was 20 yards, and then the rest of the run game was poo. So you that's kind of what it was against the Saints. But, you know, if you accumulate a ton of yardage, fine. But Brian Robinson could, like, play well in his opportunities, and it still could not be enough. Terry McLaurin could have a big day. It could still not be enough. Marshawn Lattimore could shut down A.J. Brown. that could not be enough. Like, it's going to take everything. So I think when we do the pick six often, it's like, here are the big mismatches. You know, last week it was like, oh, let's pick Chase Young because he has a chance, obviously, to get some sacks and like wreck the quarterback's day, and that can mess up your offense. But also, here's this double-edged sword where if he gets out of his rush lane, Jaden could have huge opportunities as a scrambler, and it played out exactly that way. It's like easy to identify what's going to be important. If this matchup swings one way, the Commanders win. If it swings the other way, the other team wins. And because this team, and even against like other good teams, right? Like when they played Cincinnati, it's like, all right, they got to make sure they contain this guy, that guy, that guy. You do that, you win. You don't, like, you're probably going to get your butt kicked. And they were able to do enough, and they were able to take advantage of the weak spots in Cincinnati to do their thing. Against the Eagles, there are no guarantees. It is football whack-a-mole. Bang, Saquon Barkley. Ha-ha, you only had 60 yards. Great. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith combined for 240 and 3 touchdowns, and we lost. Like, ha-ha, we put a bunch of resources in coverage. Oh, Saquon Barkley ran all over us. Aha, we stopped Jalen Carter from being effective, but here comes all their army of pass rushers. Like, they just have so many freaking dudes that it's really, really hard to kind of say, hey, this is the most important thing. So, yeah, that was hard.
Yes, death by 1,000 cuts, man. That, like, I feel like that's what it's like playing these guys. Like, I don't know, on any given Sunday, anybody can go out there and beat you, though. So that's what I'm hoping for. You know, we put together a great game plan, and we're able to snap their 10-game winning streak. Like, 10 games is crazy.
That's what we should. Math should have been in the pick six. Like, hey, it's just hard to win 10 straight in the NFL.
Yeah. Maybe
that's on the Commanders side. They're just due for a bad one. They're due for a 4-turnover game, and the Commanders are kind of due to have one, generate turnovers. You know, we obviously don't talk about the quarterbacks directly because we ban them because it's too easy. Otherwise, it would be the 2 starting quarterbacks every single week. But we try to talk about other players and kind of the impact they'll have. But I do think in this particular game, now that we're out of the pick six and the chains are off, and I can just talk about the quarterback, like, talking about Jaden and what he needs to do this weekend is actually a pretty fascinating part of this game because 2 weeks ago, Bryce Young was able to really do an excellent job extending plays against this Eagles defense. Like, it's going to be tough sledding. Jalen Carter's a menace up front. Milton Williams is really, really good. They've got Nolan Smith out on the edge, and like we saw in that first matchup, how his speed was able to limit some of what Jaden could do getting on the perimeter. And one thing that Bryce was really good at in college and that he is refound in this resurgence he's had since coming back from being benched in Carolina was his pocket movement. And he was able to find little crevices and creases in the pocket, extend plays a little bit, and then he'd find some stuff. Because the Eagles, in the first 3 seconds, are just locked down. They are so on the details of their zone coverages that nobody's ever open. Right? They know how to fill the spaces, get in the gaps, get in the lanes, pass things off. They're incredible at it because Vic Fangio, the guy who's coaching them, invented this style of defense. He's very good at coaching it. Their players are fantastic. They have a ton of athleticism, a ton of speed, and it works. But no matter how good you are, if you have to cover for 4 or 5 seconds, you're going to drop somebody. Somebody can go make a second reaction play. Like, okay, the space where the play was designed was covered. Now extend a little bit. Terry, Diami, Zach, like these guys can just go back, oh, well, there's some space over there. Let me run into it. Jaden sees them. Bang, we're out of structure. We make a play. And Bryce was able to do that enough that had Xavier Legette caught that ball and 40 seconds to go, Carolina wins that football game, and the streak was over 2 weeks ago. I think that is, and there's some times last week where Russell Wilson's able to make a couple plays like that and a couple more where he could have, but he missed the throw or guys drop balls or whatever. So Jaden is not, like, for as great and as mobile as he is, he doesn't actually consistently extend plays really well to throw. And his pocket movement, we talked about this a lot this week because of the 8 sacks against the Saints. His pocket movement isn't super high level. He'll get out and run, and sometimes he'll get out and make a play with his arm, and he's shown flashes of it this year. I think that is a part of his game that will grow. And if it grows the way it grew for Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, like, he could be an MVP candidate in a couple years. But where he currently stands right now as a rookie, thinking about just within the confines of this game, He's got to find little pockets of space, a shift here, a move there, make sure that guy doesn't get me, give a little bit extra time for a receiver to uncover, and then make sure your eyes are downfield and find them. Because without that, it's really, really hard to just execute against this Eagles team. Like winning the first down, not winning first downs, winning the first down against them is really hard. What happens when the down gets into the second action? Can you make that an advantage for you? And that ultimately really does fall back on the quarterback's creative ability.
Who would you say on the offensive line? Because I feel like their role up front dictating, whether or not we'll be able to run the ball, also pass pro. Who would you say on the offensive line has the most important, I guess, job?
I mean, I think we learned last week it takes 5, right? Like that's kind of the thing is like if any one of them screws up on any given play, it doesn't matter what the other 4 are doing. And that's the bitch of O-line play. Sorry for the French. But like that is the trying to think of another word, but that is what I said of O-line play is that 4 guys can do their job. And sometimes it's not even 4, right? It's the O-line plus the tight ends or the backs or whoever else is involved. A chip from a wide receiver, famously. Like if one guy messes it up and you have a free runner or you pass off a stunt and the other guy doesn't see it. I mean, that happened a ton last week. Cosme and Wiley had there was this stunt on the right side where they would just run this pick and the D tackle would come out and kind of run into Wiley. Wiley would pick it up, and the defensive end would loop around, and Wiley would be like, "Hey, Andrew," or "Hey, Sam, guy coming," and Cosme just like would chase the defensive tackle outside and not realize there's a looper coming around, and Jaden's running for his life. And so, like, you can't do that stuff. And some of those twists and stunts and things up front become a lot easier to pick up when you got guys that have played together. So Biadasz being back is super helpful. Run game wise, like Biadasz just knows the playbook better than Dieter. Dieter went the wrong way like 3-4 times last week. And it's like, hey man, your down block is that way. I don't know whether he missed a check or what, or just like forgot what happened in the huddle. Like these things happen in the NFL. Most people never know. Most people never know. But they happen. And they happen less to better players. And so I think Biadasz, Cosme, and Allegretti inside on Jalen Carter, like that dude will ruin your day. And he plays every snap. He hasn't missed a snap in weeks. It's wild. Defensive tackles don't do that. But he's playing like 100% of snaps. So I think those guys probably have the toughest job. But Sweat's nasty. Nolan Smith is a freak athlete. Brandon Graham, I believe, is out. And then Bryce Huff was ruled out today with the wrist. So they're a little bit thinner on the inside, but they got their hands full for sure. And, obviously Jaden can help them out by being smart with how he moves around. Like the space is going to be limited. Got to stay in the open space and not run into sacks. And that was a problem last week against New Orleans amidst an otherwise really good game from the rookie QB. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, we will pick this game. And we will wrap things up with real things real people said into real microphones. Oh, yeah. We're getting down. It's Friday. Weekend is here. We got one more segment to go. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, the way you were dancing, I didn't realize you were wearing museum gear. Also, that sweatshirt was covered with a rooster sweater earlier in the show.
Yes, sir. It was indeed. This is a part of the. Well, now I only have 3 layers on. I previously had 5 layers on.
Yeah, you did. But no, museum gear is sick. Love that.
Yes, sir.
So
I told Tyus to get some when he was here. I don't know if he did.
Tyus Jones?
Yeah.
Should have.
I had a museum hoodie on when we did Wizards Media Day
2 years ago?
2 years ago. And he was like, that's some DC gear? I was like, yeah, you should go get some. But I don't know if he did. I hope he did.
I hope he did. Know some folks over there, so I'm shout out to them. All right. Commanders, Eagles. They're playing on Sunday. The Eagles are favored by 3.5. Anthony, it's pick time. Who you got?
It's a lot of pressure, Craig, you put on me.
You want me to go first?
I think the Eagles are going to win this game.
Yeah, I do too.
I just do. I just think they're the more talented team. I do think it's going to be a one-score game again.
I agree.
It's going to be down to the wire.
I think it's going to be 27-20 Philly.
27-20?
That's what I'm going with. Look, I've felt better about this game as the week has gone on. I think that there's some stuff like you start to look at it through the lens. I think this is what happens to me almost every week, right? Is you look at the game and you break it down and you go, this is what Washington needs to do to win. And you start to convince yourself that those things are going to happen. It's a lot easier against a team like Philly to go like, yeah, but it's hard and they can also do X, Y, Z, T, O, P, and Q and win. And so that's why I'm ultimately taking Philadelphia as being objective about it. But I do think Washington can win this game. I do think it will be competitive and close. And I hope that they just, they leave with a sour taste in their mouth that causes them to beat the crap out of the Falcons, beat the crap out of the Cowboys, and then say Philly is not beating us a third time. And there's a very good chance that these teams are going to meet again. And beating a team 3 times in a year is hard. I don't care how good you are. Beating a team 3 times is hard. And as the playoff race is currently constructed, Washington will be in Philadelphia wild card weekend unless the Eagles can catch the Lions or the Packers drop some and Washington can catch Green Bay for the 6th seed.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think we're going to jump out to a lead. It's going to look good early on, Craig. I promise you, it's going to look good. Everybody's going to be up in arms. And this is the thing about the Commanders. We've had leads. We had a 17-0 lead against the Saints. We've had against the Steelers or the Eagles. I don't know. They're all running together.
They are running together. They've had huge leads in a ton of games. I mean, obviously some of them, they finished with huge leads. Other games, not as much. But they have been a very good team early. The Eagles have been very bad early.
Yep.
And that was part of the problem. Was like the Commanders moved the ball in the first game early. They couldn't score touchdowns. And so that was a game where kicking was an issue for them. That was a game where not finishing the red zone was an issue for them. If they can do that and make Jalen Hurts a passer, a pure pocket passer, whole game changes. So the formula, trademarked. Gotta get it. Gotta get up early this weekend. And then, of course, you gotta finish. The Commanders have been incredible early. Not incredibly frustrating late. See if they can finish it off. We'll be there on Sunday. Post-game show, me and Logan, about 5:30. We'll be live on YouTube for the Take Command Instant Reaction Show once I get done down in the locker room. And then that will be in the Take Command feed immediately after. Our coverage here on the Hoffman Show will start 4 o'clock sharp with First and 10 on Monday. All right, that's the pick. We're going Philly. Hopefully we're wrong. I will gladly take that, especially since we picked the same team and it won't cause Anthony to pull ahead on me. And with that, it's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
Commanders this weekend facing Cooper DeJean and the Eagles, which was news to Cooper DeJean on draft night because he was not prepared to be called by the Eagles, or frankly by anyone, because he was a victim of being a human being in the 21st century where spam phone calls are way too abundant.
Talk about your draft day a little bit. What was your draft situation? Because I read some online. You was getting prank calls.
I saw
and all
it,
that.
bro. Boy was getting, he had to almost throw the phone away.
I was getting prank calls.
That's crazy.
Left and right. I probably got 30 or 40 of them all from different numbers.
Did you ever find out who any of them were? Was it your boys? Was it just your number got out, or?
No, I never found out.
Somebody leaked the number, bro. Somebody in your circle.
Got leaked, yeah.
Yeah, damn.
Yeah.
So then when Coach finally called, how'd you know it was for real, for real?
I mean, I actually saw the Eagles called me on my phone, and I declined it the first 2 times, and they had to call my agent. So I had to take the phone from him.
Like, yo, where is Cooper?
We trying to draft this.
I'm honestly surprised that, like, one, I feel like there should be a list of, like, approved numbers. Like, hey, we're going to call – the NFL team will call you from this number. You can cross-reference it. 2, I feel like the agent should get a heads up. Like, hey, your boy, next call is a real one. Like, I feel like that's just how – like, being a human being. I don't pick up any unknown number. I guess if it was draft day, I would if I'm expecting a call. But, like, I don't pick up unknown numbers.
Yeah, I mean, but now they have like maybe who the person
is. That's true. Maybe
so
the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
It'd be really funny if it was like maybe, I don't know what Howie Roseman's wife's name is, but that'd be so funny if like the account was in her name.
Oh, in her name?
And it was like his personal cell phone for whatever reason he's using. I mean, I'm guessing he's probably got a business phone. So it would probably be like Philadelphia Eagles. But that would be really funny because like we get that sometimes when I'm spilling inside tea here. Sometimes when callers call in, I'm like, oh
yeah. Yep.
That's not the number. The name that showed up on the caller ID was not the name that you told Anthony.
Yeah. Why does it say Angela Johnson? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, if Angela wants to call, Ange, you're more than welcome anytime. But if your husband's calling, it's showing up as you. Just thought you should know that. We don't have time for another one.
We do not.
Just 20 seconds. What are we going to do with the final 20 seconds of our show, Anthony?
I would say stare at each other, but I don't think that makes for good radio.
No, that'd be awkward. Well, now we're down to 10. So I'll tell you this. Have a great weekend, everybody. That's what I want to do. I want to send you well wishes. And we'll see you Monday here on the Team 980.